All right, we're here for another episode of ScaleUp Sound Bytes, and I think we're up to episode 18 now, which probably makes us in the top 1% of all podcasts of all time, apparently.
What? Nice. Cool.
But I'm super excited to invite a friend of mine and a person who's been in my business network for a few years now. We used to do a bit of recruitment for Xharmagne when she was heading up the front-end team at Biz Solutions. She's since moved on from there and joined one of the hottest startups in the Australian tech space at the moment, revolutionising customer service AI, and a company called Lorikeet. And she's going to talk to us about her career and also what they're experiencing in technology at the moment, her passions for supporting women in technology particularly. And she's given a few talks around AI as well recently. So welcome, Xharmagne Carandang, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, excellent. So it was funny, last time we had that coffee, you were telling me that your career is pretty much like the opposite of a lot of people, where you started big and have literally gone from a bigger company to a smaller company to a smaller company to
basically.
A very, very small company.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about why.
Yeah, well, to summarize, I started actually my first full-time tech role was in federal government in Canberra. So huge,
wow.
right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Then I moved to...
Can't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, right. Then I moved to a tech consulting company. Then I went to a big bank, Australia. Then I went to big tech in US for a bit. Then I went back to a smaller startup here in Australia, consulting again, product-focused companies. And now I'm at Lorikeet, where when I joined, I don't know, I'm either the second, third, or fourth engineer, because three of us started in the same week.
Yeah,
so tiny.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You asked
Great
me.
title.
Yeah. I really like it. You know how titles usually, you don't really know what it means. It depends on the company. So something different like founding engineer, so much clearer, I think, or not. But so you asked me why I moved from company to company?
Yeah, the career. I don't typically see it like that sort of shift. Normally it's, what I see a lot of is starting in sort of startups and then going to bigger companies and then probably coming back as opposed to the opposite. But
it might be because I lived in Canberra. That might be one of the reasons, because if you're going to work in tech in Canberra, it's going to be government.
It's government. Yeah, I know.
And so I just had the opportunity through university and connections to work in federal government as my first full-time tech role. And then from there, I think I just got curious about what it's like out there outside Canberra, where everything's government work, basically.
Yeah, I hear it's the most incestual environment.
It's quite interesting. Xero's there, though, so it's not all government.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought they were in Melbourne.
Well, they're also in Canberra.
All right, fair enough.
So then after government, I thought I want to see what's out there, and I applied for a tech consulting role here in Sydney. And I think from tech consulting, I got the sense of, I really like the variety of things. Variety of tech stacks, variety of problem domains, variety of industries to work in. So I got really interested in, just learning new things on and on. And so I think from consulting, I got that sense of, I want to try something new. And that's why I just kept moving. And because I started in a big company, that's why I thought, I'll try this other company, And I think because I started in big, that's why I gradually went to small, just because I wanted to try and see what it's like in a completely different type of company.
Yeah. Do you think the old saying of like when you're in a big company, big org, you're like a small cog in a big machine, and then the level of responsibility and then ownership and I guess impact that you have did sort of change as you moved to those smaller businesses? So
that's a great question. I've been thinking about this actually, impact, right? Because that is the general thinking, and I think to a degree, that does make sense, because in a bigger company, there's a high level goal, and by the time it gets to your team, there's like a smaller goal. Therefore, the impact would be smaller. Yeah. But I've worked in a big company where, I don't know what it was, but maybe it was because the goal was really clear all the way down to us. And the translation of, if you do this, which seems like a small thing, it will actually impact number of users, and that impacts this bigger goal. Because it was clear, it didn't feel like a cog in the machine, if that makes sense. Even though we were just building one small feature, because of the way maybe it was the product manager who explained it and connected the dots for us, it didn't feel like small impact when we actually did the work.
That's such a great example of how, clear, concise, I guess, task or communication from like top down about the impact and about what you're doing does have that impact, and I guess makes you feel good as an engineer when contributing to something, right?
Exactly. I've seen people's vibe change, engineers. So I worked in a team once where the advice or the comment I got from my boss at the time was, a few weeks ago we were doing demos and this engineer, we asked him, what's it for, this thing he built? And he couldn't answer.
No way.
It was that kind of vibe. So I came in and we started doing more, bringing the engineers into doing user research, not doing user research, but at least sitting in, listening. And after a few months, that same engineer, when doing demos, started with, because the customers were facing this problem, we built this thing. And just the motivation changes, I think. It's like, because engineers feel more involved, like they're actually solving problems as opposed to just doing this specific task. Yeah.
It's such a huge thing. And I think like we've been doing a lot of work with principal engineers at the moment, and the thing that really captivates them in order to move is their understanding of how they're solving a big problem for that end user or that customer and being involved in that. But I think also if you're able to capably communicate that just to a broader team, whether it's a junior engineer or a senior one, you can just instill a sense of value that is so important to get people to get shit done, really.
Yeah, because even for a junior, they can make an impact in a customer's life. I think if you can scale down, the big goal of this customer is to get so-and-so job done. One of their pain points is it's hard to find this thing. That could be a junior-sized task, and they can make that impact if you can translate that goal all the way through instead of saying, hey, move this menu from here to here and change this button,
It's so important. I think that sense of value and worth goes a hell of a long way. And it says something for the engineering culture, right, of the business, if it's tied into the business as opposed to seen as a cost center or just not in line with the business, right?
Exactly.
All right, okay. So moving to, so it doesn't necessarily matter if you're in a bigger organization or not if you have that clear communication, I guess, feedback loop between engineers and customer
and business.
Yeah.
I think so. I just think though that with startups maybe it's just easier because there are less layers.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you're either really good at a big company translating that all the way down. Or you're just in a startup where by default you get all that context usually. Yeah.
I think companies as they get bigger, they struggle with the internal politics as opposed to the communication and the end goal when money isn't as big as a problem.
That's right. They get a bit more lax.
Exactly. Which is a big deal, right? And then, it's a huge shift in culture. But it's a hard thing to maintain though, as I think I hear a lot of businesses as they scale, they do struggle with maintaining that culture sometimes with the layers when they're inputting layers. So,
I mean, that's why you get all these, let's transform. I think at one point the trend was all about agile transformation to solve this. And I'm hoping now there's this, I think there's more people talking about more product thinking across the organization to help translate those goals through, but we'll see. But I'm thinking also that even in smaller companies, it's not a given that you get all that context. For example, you could be in a startup where you've got all these customers, you're a lean team, you're fighting fires. You don't have time to get the context, even though it's right there. So there's a mix of challenges, I think. You think you've had big or small?
You've had that experience before in the past?
Yes, for sure.
So, and have you ever, I can imagine sometimes that potentially, I don't know if this actually happens, but if you're in that sort of startup environment, they can be a bit more protective around what information they do want to share with engineers, or is that never the case?
To me, I've seen that it's not really depends on the type of the a company thing. It's more the type of people. It's
Yeah,
more a
sure.
cultural thing
Yeah,
rather than.
yeah.
I've been in big companies where they were super happy to share the context, you know. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right, and look, I think one of the things that you're passionate about, and what I've always seen you, like following you on your socials and stuff like that, is, you know, you've given a lot of time outside of work to like women in tech events, and I think it was is it She Codes?
Yep, She Codes.
Yeah. Follow them. But yeah, and talking about sort of your experience and promoting that in tech, and it's a big deal. Like we follow a lot and just see the stats of women in tech, and you know, I think overall a couple of years ago, I don't know if it's sort of changed down to 2025, but I think 30% of all software engineering graduates in Australia were identified as female. But as that progressed and went up higher the ranks, so towards like your principal engineer to a level where you're at now, it drops down to like 10%.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, you know, 30%'s, you know, it's like, oh, how do we solve the problem? Like, and what actually happens in that process? And a lot of people have their different opinions on it, and I know there's a few great companies out there doing a lot to help promote it. These companies like F Factor that does a lot of great work there as well, and what you did as well with She Codes as well. But yeah, what's your sort of take on that, and like, and from your own experiences, is there anything that sort of happens, do you think, to see that sort of drop off?
It's funny because for me personally, my personal experience is that I think I've been a bit spoiled.
Yeah, okay.
Because growing up, I didn't even know there was this men versus women in tech thing.
Interesting.
I think it's because I grew up with, so my parents, my mom and dad were both into tech.
All right.
Even my mom. So my mom would she built an Excel spreadsheet that can solve Sudoku puzzles. You know, she's a civil engineer, and
There you go.
she went to this one job where she said, oh, it's really hard to find info, so I'm going to build an Access database to help me do my job. So it was just a thing. I didn't see it as a men versus women type of thing. So for me, I grew up with it being the norm that, yeah, of course, it wasn't even a thought that, oh, can women do tech too? That didn't even cross my mind. So I just pursued my interests without knowing that.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me personally.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I got into software engineering course, and then I start to notice that, ooh, it's just me and a few other women here.
Yeah.
Which is a bit weird. I don't know, I think also growing up, the types of hobbies I had were typically, there were more men in it, like I play video games, kind of thing. So I don't know, it just felt normal to me to just do what I wanted to do. It's fun, just do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, speaking to women now at events, it feels like there is this kind of thought or intuition that, ooh, can I even do tech? I'm a woman. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's changing. So for example, She Codes, they help people, women already in a career, want to change to a tech career. So it's really heartening to see a lot of women now there, realizing that, ooh, yes, I can do this too.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's the purpose of what She Codes
She Codes, yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it sounds like such a great role model, like, and your mum having it more of a, it's like a growth mindset by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
That's what it is, where it's like, okay,
Just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
it's
thing.
like, oh, I can solve this problem, or I can at least have a go at solving it. And
Basically.
Yeah.
And I wonder so that's why, so I help out with She Codes, but there are other communities like, I think it's called Girls Programming Network, where they help, I think, girls in high school. So I think that might help as well. So kind of,
level.
because I had a role model growing up. Maybe having role models for other girls growing up would help too.
It's a huge thing of that whole mantra of like, you can't be what you can't see. Obviously, you saw.
Yeah,
what you could
I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's same with me. Like, I mean, I never thought of there to be like a boys versus girls thing in sort of anything. It's funny, like in recruitment, there's more women, female recruiters that I've noticed and worked with that I think if I went to an office where I sort of worked before as well, than men. And I feel like women are better recruiters, much better recruiters, than men. They listen more. they're better at attracting, I think, new relationships as well. But I think the fundamental skill is that they listen more.
That's really
better.
interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
I wonder, I just enjoy being in teams where there's diversity in perspective.
Yeah.
And again, I'm really spoiled at Lorikeet because I don't know if you know, but half of us engineers are women.
Oh, right. No, I didn't know that.
There you go. And also, quite
awesome.
a few of us are career changers. So we have an engineer who used to be a journalist.
All right.
We have another one who used to be a building architect.
Wow.
So I think just having different perspectives really helps.
Yeah.
And again, setting the norm of anyone can be in tech if you really wanted.
Super interesting about that building architecture. I don't know. It could be the same one. If she's joined your business recently, she was
Probably different. It's a guy, but
Oh,
yes.
okay. All right. No, I don't.
Good to know.
It's a guy. It's a guy. All right. Yeah. No, she was an architect for like 5 years, and she moved into front end engineering. But it's just like that. The way when I spoke to her on the phone, the way she sort of approached problems and thinking about that design, like almost like a design system.
Exactly.
Design.
Yeah. I think the mindset across different careers could be quite similar. So there's transferable skills that some people don't even realize until they, try a She Codes workshop.
Yep. What sort of advice would you give females looking to move into a technology career or starting out their technology career?
Oh, firstly, it would be to surround yourself with other women.
Yeah.
So, communities like She Codes, there's Her Tech Circle and Girls Programming Network as well.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
If you're starting out, just to see, because there are different options as well as for engineers. There's so many different types of engineers you can have. And it doesn't even have to be engineering. It could be something else in tech.
Yeah.
So just to have role models in that wide range of roles, you can see what's out there and what's possible and see what you like, kind of thing.
There's so many, it's funny, there's so many roots of, particularly in software engineering, of females that have contributed to, where technology is today.
In the history, yep.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't know this until digging a bit deeper about, I think there's 4 engineers for the Apollo 13 mission. They were all female, African-American females as well. And, I always, promote, there's Heidi Lamar, who, was her work going towards the invention of Wi-Fi, right? But she had such a great career as an actor as well, but had that complete what you wouldn't define as a nerdy woman.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just so different, and it's just so perspective that you don't really hear about. You probably hear it. I'm seeing it a lot more, which is great now, but definitely didn't know about it when I was at university and growing up as well.
Yeah, I'm really hoping. It feels like there's still the stereotype, but I think it's dying down a bit, hopefully with all the efforts of all these communities.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And you recently gave a talk on AI, LLMs.
Quite a few.
Yeah?
Yeah, I actually, how many did I, 3 different talks about Lorikeet from different perspectives, as in, the first talk I did was called Helping Users Wield AI Magic.
Wow.
So this was targeted towards designers kind of audience. So it wasn't too technical. It was more about, one of the reasons why I joined Lorikeet is that I think the user experience for AI apps isn't fully defined. There's no clear patterns. You're kind of forced to go back to the fundamentals of good user experience research and design.
Oh, wow.
I find that really exciting.
Yeah, and just for everyone, what is Lorikeet? What does it do?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So Lorikeet is, how do I say, it's a customer support AI. So it's a platform for human customer support teams to train Lorikeet how to talk to their customers.
Oh, wow, okay.
And there's a lot out there. Everyone's probably experienced talking to a chatbot on the internet when they're asking a question. The difference with Lorikeet is we typically work with customers who don't usually trust AI to talk to their customers. So customers and companies like fintech and health tech, so highly regulated, it's a bit more risky if AI gets things wrong when they talk to their customers.
Yep. And why was going down to the grassroots of your user experience so important for developing?
I think because, just in general as well, is when there's a new fancy technology and there are no clear patterns, there's nothing you can just go, ooh, Airbnb does it like this. Let's copy that pattern kind of deal. The jobs that users are doing with AI, or even just how AI works, is quite different. So those patterns aren't necessarily how it's best to work with the AI. There's different concerns as well. For example, trust. Do I trust that this AI is doing what I want it to do? Do I know what it's actually doing? Yeah, so there's different challenges and different things that actually, maybe that the job that they're trying to do is similar to something that you do without AI, but because of how AI works, there are different things to consider. Again, like trust, and also maybe people want more control. So there's different challenges to consider. And if you go down to the fundamentals of UX and, you know, making sure that you understand what the customer's trying to do, their actual experience, you can really build your own patterns, I guess. So that's what I was excited about with Lorikeet, is we get to define the next patterns of how to build UX, good UX for SaaS AI.
Yeah, right. And by patterns, you mean the process?
Oh, more like, UX patterns, user experience patterns.
Yeah.
Kind of like, what's a good example? I don't know, like the hamburger menu. That's the thing. When you click on the hamburger menu, the navigation comes out. Just UI and UX patterns like this.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas I think, for example, with AI right now, what you'll see a lot is giant text box, and you type a prompt in there, because that's what ChatGPT does. To interact with AI, the most common thing is typing in text into ChatGPT.
Yep.
And so what I've seen with some other companies as well, even though they have their own product, at the end of the day, there's a giant text box, type in a prompt to the AI.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, not all companies do this, versus there are some other companies that do it more subtly, like maybe, I don't know, Slack, I think. It's like kind of subtle and hidden how it uses AI. It's just,
Right.
summarize this thing.
Okay.
It doesn't even super obviously say in your face, AI. No, it's just summarize.
Okay.
It's focusing more on the task rather than AI.
Yeah. Rather than that interaction, that front-facing.
That's
thing.
right, yeah. So many different ways to interact with AI, where I really hope that we can build something where it's more about what the user's trying to do rather than, hey, fancy new AI thing.
Yeah. What do you think your recent talk to those designers, what was that specifically about? So I sort of cut you off there.
Yeah, no, all good. So I was actually exploring a product that we built at Abyss, actually. So that was using AI. Before Gen AI, it was machine learning. And comparing it to Lorikeet, where we kind of had similar lessons in each of it. That, for one thing, as I mentioned, trust matters, especially with AI tools. So I remember with Abyss, there was this AI tool where in the beginning, the algorithm wasn't quite there, so it was messing up in some specific edge cases. And then when we fixed that algorithm, and it's better now, the user said, oh, I don't know, I'm still going to use my workaround instead of use this AI thing, because it messed up before. I don't know if I should use it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so that kind of thing. Whereas with Lorikeet, because we're working with companies and we're going to talk to their customers, there's this whole feeling of, ooh, Spot talking to customers. So again, there's that question of trust, and how do you gain that trust? So for example, with Lorikeet, what we do is we make everything quite transparent as to what AI is trying to do here. And we do things like we have controls so that if Lorikeet's messing up, here's a big switch, you can just switch it off. So you're establishing trust by giving them ways to control it, making it very transparent, and giving tools to test Lorikeet to build that confidence. So yeah, there's just concepts across both different kinds of AI tools.
And when you say the customer, is that like Lorikeet's customer or Lorikeet's customer's customers?
So good point.
Yeah.
So are Lorikeet's customers, because Lorikeet's customers are the customer support agents who have to train Lorikeet how to talk to their customers.
Yeah, right, okay, yeah.
Yep.
I compare it to, I mean, so, you know, AI is everywhere, right? It's disrupting pretty much every white collar industry at the moment. Particularly, it's impacting a lot of recruitment. I see a lot of these AI startups coming up, particularly with like, I can imagine a tool like Lorikeet could be easily applied to recruitment, particularly with customer service, the customer service element of it. So like doing interviews and basically like that. I don't think it'd be too much of a stretch for you guys to do something like that later on. But there's a few out there already, and I just think like if I was going for a job and I were to interview with an AI, I wouldn't do it. But that's just me. But I also think like people, if the Gen Alphas or the young hawk coming through today, they would do it because they have been interacting with AI a lot more and sort of just a digital realm a lot more, do you think? And so, and yeah, I don't know.
That's a really interesting point. Is how I think of AI. It's a way to do things more efficiently. But it always depends on what you're trying to do. So for example, for me personally, I wouldn't want to interview with some AI because for me, when I interview, I want to suss out how the company is and how the team I'm working with is. And with an AI, it just becomes a one-way thing. Yeah, it does. And that's it. There's no like feedback loop. It's just you answering questions. Yeah. And that's why I'm really passionate about the idea of, yes, AI helps you be more efficient, but what actually are you really trying to do with whatever you're building? Because then you can ask, oh, is AI even good for this bit? That was another of the concepts that I discussed in that first talk with designers, is this whole thing about, I called it balance, but it's basically for a certain task or a goal, it doesn't have to be all AI. It could be, this bit is AI, this bit we need humans there, and this bit is just good old-fashioned computer logic. And you can have a mix of it. It isn't all or nothing AI.
Yeah. I think, so yeah, it's just sort of integrating that whole process into it. And I think a lot of people, just particularly as like a whole, I guess, like macro thing, are sort of getting really scared, particularly in software engineering, right? I mean, I had this, it's been blown up on my LinkedIn feed today. Just, I forget the name of the company, but basically the CEO was saying that software engineering jobs, AI is going to be able to do 90% of it in 6 months' time, and then in a year's time it'll be able to do 100%. So either that 10% is like really, really hard, and it's going to take them, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, that sort of fear in the market, and there's obviously a lot of different viewpoints of that, but what are your sort of takes on that?
I mean, at Lorikeet, our engineers, we all use AI tools to help us, actually. And it's quite good. Me personally, I'm not, I think more about the opportunity that it presents rather than worry about it, but that could just be
There's
me.
There's that growth mindset again.
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, it helps me do some things, but other things when it's more about the whole, again, questioning what actually is the customer trying to do and translating that to technical implementation. AI's not been super helpful with that quite yet. And also, even when you're getting the AI to help you with something, you need to explain to it what you're trying to do.
You didn't know what you're doing.
So that's right. So even the concepts, the thinking about what is the actual goal here, I feel like that's still important anyway. Yeah,
I think it's funny. I had a candidate go through an interview process and do a test, take-home test, and the client was like, answered really well, but it was a bit suspicious. I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, it looks like he might have used some sort of code generator or something. I was like, okay, I'll go check with him. Check with him, and he's like, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm like, why would I do that? It's just stupid. And then I was like, okay, cool, you sure? Like, what did you do? He goes, well, look, I wrote it out, I did it, but then I used ChatGPT to run test cases on it because it had specific test cases on it, but I wanted to like amplify it to make sure it worked properly and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, some failed, so I'll fix them. And I was like, all right, okay. So that made his code like pretty perfect. But he didn't actually use it to begin with. And I was like, that's kind of like a blurred line, right? Like, I don't know. And then, and
I don't know. I think it depends on the company. I mean, like, again, at Lorikeet, we all use
coding. But you're going to be using tools on the job.
That's right. So this is a whole thing about me in interviews. I really like when interviews are actually a representation of how you're going to work. I know that's hard because it's just 1 or 2 hours, but ideally you should be able to use you're proving that you could do the work.
Yeah.
If you don't have the tools that you usually have when you're working, then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I was super interested about that. Okay. So why working for a startup then?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
I need to say my backstory, my origin story. Okay, so the first company I worked at full-time, I was a junior, I was learning, I was so excited. I was learning domain-driven design. We were doing microservices back in 2008 or something. I was really excited. 2 years into the job, we went to a giant Christmas party, interdepartmental Christmas party, and our team met this other team, started chatting. This other team started complaining about and venting about some software that they're forced to use. That was our software. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that was
awkward.
Yeah, see, I don't even remember what happened after we realized because I just blocked it out of my memory. But but it really hit home for me that yes, coding is fun and I love it. It's like a craft that you learn. But at the end of the day, you're coding to build something to help people do stuff.
Yeah, solve a problem.
To solve a problem. And from then, I worked in different companies that approach it in different ways. But ultimately, for me, I like thinking of products and software as every single feature you build is a bet you're placing that this is going to help the customers or the business. Every single thing.
Yeah.
And to know that you have to check that it works, that you won the bet. And the goal is to do that in a way that you do that quickly and you actually validate that you win the bet. And so it's this whole thing about iteration and experimentation that I really like. And I've seen it in different companies, even big companies. So I worked at a company where we called it hypothesis-driven build, where every single user story was a hypothesis, kind of thing. I worked in companies where every sprint, you have to deliver some kind of value so we can check that it delivered value. So experimentation. But I feel like at a startup, it more naturally suits that environment because you have to do it, because you're lean, because you need to be solving a problem. You're not, a giant company that can relax a bit.
Yep.
So that's why I really like startups. It's really, that's the first reason why I really like startups. It's really matches the whole experimentation type of build, which I enjoy.
I love what you just sort of broke that down and the metaphor you used of like thinking in bets and making bets. You reminded me of so I used to play a lot of poker, and there's a famous female poker player, Annie Duke. She's won a couple of World Series of bracelets, but she's gone on to do business consulting now. And she's written a book called exactly Thinking in Bets, about the decisions that you make are essentially bets that you make to improve the business or what you just said, that they're a result of a customer. It's
possible that I got that wording from her.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and then just made it, software features are bets.
Have you heard of her before? Or?
Poker player sounds familiar.
Right, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but that whole thing, what you just described, is essentially she's taken from poker and applied it to business.
Yep.
And, a lot of what I've learned from the poker table and playing the game, I apply to business as well. But that whole little bets, just do a little bet here and that could give you a lot more information.
Yeah.
Or am I doing a big bet here to win something? But if I do that and I get it wrong, it could cripple us moving forward. So it's like that balance of what it is. But small little bets, iterating, getting that feedback, and then
quick feedback.
Throw the hand away, or should we keep going?
Right. Instead of waiting 2 years to a Christmas party where you realize everyone hates it. So that's the top reason why I enjoy working at startups and just building products. The second reason is that, again, it's a personal thing. I'm a very collaborative builder. Yeah. I really like working, cross-function, get all the context, because I really think engineers are really effective when they know why they're building what they're building. And that collaboration, again, is just well-suited to startup because it's such a small team. So I could work with a customer success manager, even marketing, and just get their take on something that affects this thing I'm building.
Yeah. I interviewed a principal engineer recently, and he was saying like software engineering is a team sport, and I was just like, boom, like drop mic moment, right? That was such a great thing.
Yep.
And yeah, that collaboration feeling I think is so important. So you feel that collaboration is just enhanced or intensified more when you're in a startup?
I think it's more that is the default, so it's easier. I mean, I've worked at, for example, ThoughtWorks or somewhere where because of the way they work, I mean, they have to know how to work because they have to drop teams and different customers, deploy them really quickly. So this structured way of thinking and collaborating. Whereas a startup, you just have to kind of thing. It's the default, you have to, because otherwise it's just not going to work kind of thing. Also because I think that with collaboration, it's not just you get the context so you can do your job better, but it feels more like you're working towards the same goal. You're more aligned. There's more ownership. Kind of like when we brought those engineers into user research, they felt more ownership of what they were building versus being told, can you do this?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that we ask most people on the pod.
Okay.
So, who is the most influential person in your career and why, or who has been?
The thing I always default to, I already kind of said this, but my mom.
Yeah, sure.
Because again, I don't know if I would have even considered tech without it just being a norm when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. She sounds like a amazing woman. Yeah. Just I love that story you gave of like, oh, I'm just going to create this Access spreadsheet.
Yep,
or something.
that's right.
Yeah. All right. Do you, you said you read, or you mentioned like a book before when I mentioned it. What do you think's been the most important book that you've read to help you with your career, or one of the best books that you think you've read?
So I don't read much nonfiction.
Okay. Yeah.
But in terms of career related, I love the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah.
I can go all day about that book.
Yeah,
How
I
good
know.
is that book? Yeah.
And it's not a long read.
No.
And it's quite
Lean
entertaining.
Lean Sony's done a great job of making that like a non-fiction novel, into
That's right.
Yeah, give us that whole persona of a startup, right? He uses that startup use case, and she's a startup consultant, but she draws down from her husband, who's a basketball coach. Right?
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like I like how it uses storytelling, but it's got these concepts that apply wherever. It's about teams and about, again, how you said software engineering is a team sport. I think it really helps.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing of like how they were great and they lost their way, and they were like market leader, and now they're getting beaten by competitors, and they were this startup, but it's just like that whole thing of like not reinventing. They don't really need to reinvent themselves. They just got to look inside and just remove
the introspection.
Ways.
That was side quest, but it was one of my other favorite things. Across all the companies I worked at, I noticed that one of the things that's common is that teams all work differently. Right. But then to get your teams to work efficiently, how do you do that? And one of the techniques I've found that really helps, if it's run properly, is just the typical sprint retrospective or team retrospective. Because I feel like if you don't continuously check to see how your team is working together and if it's working well, how do you improve? So I think of process and ways of working similar to how I think of product. You iterate and you learn. So yeah. Yeah,
right. How good. Iterate and learn. Yeah. And do it quickly, right? I think
as quick as you can without, I've seen some companies, I worked in some teams where we tried to slice it as small as possible and get it out there, but you don't really learn anything because it was just a small bit that doesn't solve the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really into, this isn't a book, but one of my favorite articles is called How You Slice It, I think, called by Jeff Payton, I think.
I know that one, yeah.
There you go.
We'll have to link that one, yeah?
Yeah, okay, sure.
How you slice it, yeah.
It's all in how you slice it.
Yeah.
It's all about how you have the right level of iteration, how it's small enough so you can do it quickly, but it's big enough so that you can actually learn something valuable end to end, and it's actually useful for the customers.
Yeah. One of the first guests we had on this was, on Sound Bytes, was Anton Saborin, who was CTO of Stream, and he had a great mantra of we move quickly but we don't run. We move quickly but we don't run. And you just remind me a hell of a lot about that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. Okay. What was that article? How you slice it?
It's all in how you slice it. Literally a cake slicing.
Nice. All right, cool. And what was the last question I wanted to ask? Who was the most important person? I think that's it. Yeah. Oh yeah. What habits? Sorry, this is the last one. What 3 habits would you contribute to your success?
Ooh, great question. I have some habits in terms of just personally at work. One thing I always do is when someone asks me for something, help, advice, can you build this thing? We have this acronym at Lorikeet. I'm not going to say the acronym, it's too hard. What are you really trying to do? So always ask what even is the end goal so that you can together come up with, actually, is this the right solution for this thing?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think that's how great engineers think, right? It's trying to get to the root of the problem of what you're always trying to do.
Yeah, I think it always helps. Because it might not even
be solving it with technology. There might be someone next door that knows the answer.
Yes, that's right. Or there could be just different technological options for this. Or maybe it's not even a problem.
Maybe it's not even a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and maybe it's not a problem that the customer thinks as well. But you do. Like that's sometimes when we build things here, it's like, are we just iterating or building something for our own vanity, or is this really what our clients want, or what the candidates that we want?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. What's another one?
Habits.
What about yourself? Like personal things?
Man, it's not a habit, but okay. So like I do gym and dance classes. That's my hobby. And what I use it for, especially, startups, they can be intense, especially if you're at a very ambitious startup like Lorikeet. But the thing with that is we need to make it sustainable. Otherwise, we all burn out.
Sure.
So I have this thing I call it my leading indicator for burnout.
You have an indicator for burnout?
Yes.
That's amazing.
So it's if I miss 50% of my dance classes in the last 2 weeks, I probably need a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I habitually check how I'm going there and then just make a call if, I need to take a bit of a rest.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
That's quite impressive. Yeah.
I mean, I've met other people who, I think I had a colleague whose indicator was literally his blood pressure. So if he goes to the doctor and his blood pressure is high, he'll start thinking, is it my job?
I think I check my blood pressure like once every 10 years.
So well, there you go.
But you touched on something pretty important, I think.
Yeah.
And I saw a tweet by one of the co-founders of Netflix, not Reed, the other guy, but he had a rule that every Tuesday, finish at 5 o'clock so he can do date night with his wife. And that was like a deal breaker. Like that, it was a no. So
interesting.
He would never break that rule. And he never broke that rule for his whole career. So that was quite interesting. That he always kept that Tuesday night free. So I think it's like important to have those rules or check-ins with yourself to keep your mental health sane, right?
Especially for me personally, and in startups, right? Because you can just keep going. Because it's exciting, because it's fun, you're learning things, your customers are happy. Yeah. So you need growing, something.
Customers, money's coming in.
That's right.
Yeah, we're building
There's
something.
all these stuff
I
want to do.
Next Atlassian, this is happening.
There's just so much you want to do. So I think it's really important to have something of some sort to check in with yourself. And do it. Always do it. Yeah, as in check. Yep.
All right. I think that's a great spot to finish this, Xharmagne. Thanks so much for coming in. I really
no worries.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. No, thank you. Okay.